This is the discussion that's related to week 2. Some of you were probably there and may remember that we had some technical difficulties. So we're going to cover some of the same information, but we'll also be looking at answering some of the questions that have come up in the chats and in emails to me. So I'll start by introducing myself. You probably saw my introduction on the Learning Portal. My name is Charlene Voice. I am the Associate Director of Out of School Time Initiatives at the Center. And so in addition to doing trainings like this, I'm also involved in adapting Ruler for implementation in out of school time programs. So things like after school enrichment programs and so on. Catherine, do you want to introduce yourself? You're on mute.
Hi, my name is Catherine, and I have been at the center for about 9 years, and the main role that I have there is to help schools engage families, help rural schools find pathways and have feel supported and have resources to help bring ruler into the home. And then like Charlene, I do, and like all of us at the center, we wear many hats and have lots to do. So I'm happy to see you.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
My name is Nikki Albertson. I've been at the center for almost 20 years, and I'm Director of Content Communications. I work really closely with Charlene and Catherine, and I try to attend as many of these training sessions as possible because I love to hear from all of you. So I'm happy to be here today as well.
Great. So just as a reminder, so this, as I mentioned, is the discussion session for that would have happened typically in week 2. In week 1, there was a webinar style presentation, and that was led primarily by Dr. Mark Brackett, the director of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. In weeks 2, 3, 4, and 5, we'll have more of an interactive discussion as we move through some of the content. And then the final week, there will be another webinar style session, and you'll hear again from Dr. Brackett. So the goal of these sessions is that they are interactive, that you have an opportunity to ask questions, ask for clarification, hopefully, share some of your ideas. Each week we'll spend some time on the on content that we're reviewing and reflecting on, and also sort of look forward into things that are coming up. So before we move on, I'd just like you to share something that you did over the break, if you were able to take a break, something that you did to really take care of yourself during that time, or something that you can commit to take care of yourself as you're sort of entering back into the school year, whether that means going back into a building or just sort of tuning into your screen again. So we'll spend just about 3 minutes so that you can kind of share, your self-care strategies over the break. Okay, Nikki, are they set up?
The rooms should be open. And if you don't see the rooms, then you can go down to the icon at the bottom of the screen that says breakout rooms, and you can go from there. Now everyone is back.
Okay, great. So if you are comfortable, I'd love to hear how you took care of yourself over the break and what your plans are for moving into the next few weeks. Someone care to share?
I'll go. So I had Stephanie in my group, and we spoke about our self-care. So hers was just not doing anything over the break, just being still and just relaxing. And I said mine was washing my hair, which is a great thing for me to do because it's just me and water and just quietness and just cascades of water and me by myself without my kids, just for a few moments. So that was great.
Totally relate to the water thing. Yeah, Tim.
Yeah, so I got an opportunity to catch up with some family. My sister just had a new baby about a month ago, so I got to catch up with, her and her family. And for my self-care, I'm an avid jogger. So having the extra week off, I got a chance to kind of catch up on my jogging. To me, it's like almost like a meditation. It kind of like clears my mind, it relaxes my body. So I was very happy to be able to do that on a regular basis. And, just catch up with friends and family and just kind of get a chance to relax and enjoy getting the chance to recharge the batteries kind of thing, like everybody else, basically.
Yeah. So kind of slowing down and just
Yeah.
being in the day.
Yeah,
in the
which was
moment.
nice. Not have to like adhere to such a strict schedule. Yeah.
Other things that people either did over the break or are looking forward to doing as we enter this new year. Well, I don't know where I know you're all sort of in New England, is that right? Or in the Northeast? Did everybody? Oh, no. Okay. Dr. Lai, where are you?
I live in Freeport, Long Island, but we're in Far Rockaway, Queens.
Oh, okay. Okay, but you're all in, is there anybody who isn't shoveling snow today? Catherine?
No, I think we might get a little rain today. I'm in California.
Oh, okay, great. Well, I hope you all keep in mind the importance of making sure you take care of yourselves. So Nikki, can you pull up the housekeeping slide? So by this time in the training, a lot of this will already be sort of, you'll already know about it. And so this is just kind of a refresher. This is a 6-week training. So you're in the middle of that now. There have been questions about, because of the break and sort of planning, trying to figure out how to do it with the break in the middle. I just want to reassure people that if you aren't right in sync with us, you will have an additional 6 weeks of access to the training platform. So don't worry if you're not right with us. I mentioned before, there are opening closing webinars in week 1 and week 6, and then the sessions in between are discussions. That's what we're doing now. These sessions are intended to be interactive. Mute. We're a small enough group. You can unmute, raise your physical hand or the little icon on the bottom if you want to jump in. But everything will be recorded, so you'll always be able to go back and view things. And then last, give grace. And that really means in everything that we do. So when we're online, if you're juggling a lot of things, but also in terms of the comments and your participation online, it's really where things come alive. So I encourage you to do that. But we understand that things happen. So just so that it's clear, I'll be moving along with you in terms of comments and content. So if you're doing week 1 exercises and we're in week 2, I might miss something, but just know that that you can move along at your own pace, speed up and slow down as you need to. This training is really for you to learn the skills of emotional intelligence, to learn the ruler tools, and to really start thinking about taking ruler back to your school. So in the course of the last couple of weeks, there have been some questions about what ruler looks like in a school. And so I thought it would be helpful to just do a little bit of overview of what ruler is. A lot of times people think that it's that, they hear that we're doing an SEL program and they think curriculum. So they think about coming to a training on how to teach a curriculum, but that's really not, Ruler is much more than that. Ruler has a curriculum, pre-K to 12, and that's an essential part, but it's really more than that. It's about the whole school. It's a systemic approach to social emotional learning. And it's really focused on learning how to use the information that emotions provide to enhance both our own well-being and our relationships with others. And it's about using Ruler to really create a community that is supportive, welcoming, and sort of comfortable for everyone who's there. Ruler provides a common language. So as we go along, when we talk about what is an emotion, that can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. But Ruler helps define those things so that when we talk about emotions, we all know that we all know what we're talking about. There's that common language. And probably the way to sum it up maybe is that it's a mindset. Ruler is a mindset. It's a way of being, and it impacts everything you do in the school. It impacts the way leaders lead, the way teachers teach, and the way students learn. So it's about changing how your school sort of does business. Nikki, is there anything you want to add to that?
Nope, I think you covered it all. So there is a curriculum and you can certainly use it early childhood all the way to high school. But it's also really just a way of thinking and acknowledging the importance of emotions and the information that emotions provide.
Great, thanks. Any questions at this point about, like, when we talk about Ruler, implementing Ruler, sort of what that means? Okay. That's probably the most common question that I had in sort of side conversations is, how do we do this? What does this mean? So great. Okay, the next slide, please. So we think about Ruler as having 4 phases, and you are here in this training because you're where the red sort of locator button or locator icon is. And you are at the point where your school is ready to start. Your school, a team, somebody has said, we're going to do this. We're ready to go. And they started by asking you to attend this training. And your role in this phase is really to learn the Ruler content, to become familiar with the Ruler tools, and to think about what Ruler will look like at your school. So you are members of your implementation team at your school. The number of people from each school, your implementation team may include more than the people who are at this training, but those of you who are here are really going to be the champions for Rulers. It's going to be your role once you finish this 6-week training to really take it back to your team, to add members to your implementation team and figure out how you're going to move to the second phase. And the second phase is adult development. So that's where school leaders, every adult in the school actually. So the idea with Ruler, we recommend usually that the adult development process takes about 6 months to 2 years. It really depends on the school, but it's important for the adults in a building to learn the skills, to learn the tools, use the tools, practice the skills, so that you both have that in your own toolbox, but also you can provide, you can be a role model for the students in your school. No matter what social emotional learning program you are implementing, one of the keys to success is the skills of the adults. So if you don't address those skills, success is going to be, sort of out of reach. So that's why we suggest starting with adults. And sometimes we hear, wow, but we really want to, make a difference with kids. Well, believe me, spending time on adult development does make a difference with kids. It impacts as you learn these skills, and as staff in your schools learn these skills, it really influences their interactions across the board. So once you've done that time with staff development, it moves into phase 3, which is the student implementation. And that's when you can start teaching the ruler skills, or teaching the ruler tools for use in the schools. You can start implementing what we call core routines that help put structure to the use of the tools, and also start implementing the curriculum. Some schools find that they do sort of a tag team. So they might spend time with the mood meter with adults and then introduce it to their students. So you can sort of do that A-B process, but really before you even do that, it's important to spend time on adult development. And then finally is sustainability. And that's where ruler is really part of your school's DNA. It's part of everything you do. And you can start to get creative, and there's creativity across the whole time, but you can really start to make it your own more. And Catherine, do you just want to say just a couple of words about parent education, because parents are critical adults in this process?
Sure. Yeah, we have resources really at every phase. So in the beginning, we have drafted letters that you can send out to let families know that this is what you're doing, that you're going to be developing and cultivating these skills yourself, and then rolling them out to the students, and that they'll be hearing more. But it's great when you let them know in the beginning. They feel excited, and that enthusiasm can really buoy and support your efforts. And so there are letters, there are presentations, lots of things in the family folders. And there's a little video you can watch that just kind of lets you know what materials are there and best times to use them. So, and then of course, during the student implementation phase, there are lots of other kinds of both workshops, activities that kids can take home and do with their families, conversation starters. So you'll find lots of materials.
Yeah. So just to make sure that when we say all of the adults, it's important to think that parents are some of those important adults in a young person's life and in your school community. Okay, Nikki, next slide, please. So this is kind of a recap of the initial part of the training. We'll go through them fairly quickly so that we have time to think about the charter as well. So the first is, what are emotions? We all say, well, we kind of know what they are, but it's helpful to have a precise definition so that we all are in agreement about what we're talking about. So an emotion is an immediate response to something that happens in your environment, something out there in the world, or it can be a response to something that you think about, that something that's evoked in your mind, whether it's a thought or a memory, or the initial response is something that changes. We notice a change in our thinking, a change in our physiology. Our heartbeat may pound faster or slower, we may feel tense or loose. And we also notice a change in our behavior. The most obvious one is probably we approach or avoid when we experience an emotion. It's a signal for us to do that. Do we want to get closer to whatever just happened or retreat from it? The purpose, emotions don't just exist for no reason. Their purpose is really to give us information, to help us make decisions. There's a reason why we, experience fear at the sight of a saber-toothed tiger. It tells us to do something. And sometimes, so when we think about emotions, we think about big emotions like fear with a saber-toothed tiger, but we also, those are the ones we remember. They're the ones we notice. but we're always feeling something. We always have some emotions going on. They might be sort of ticking away at the back of our mind, but they're there. And we often experience more than one emotion. We've got, the sort of big emotions, what's happening, in my life, sort of anxiety, and then what's happening right now. My chair is not very comfortable, so it really is, when we talk about emotions, it's really about the response to something that's going on in our environments or ourselves. Historically, people often thought about emotions as being interference, that they disrupt our thinking, that if we could just leave them at the door, things would be better off. You may have even been told, leave your emotions at the door. It's really not possible. They're with us all the time. But instead of thinking about them as interfering, as getting in the way, the current view of emotions is that they are information, especially if we pay attention to them. So when we notice them, we can think to ourselves, why is that happening? Why am I feeling that? What is this emotion telling me? What do I need to pay attention to? The shift from emotions as interference to emotions as information has allowed us to think more about how we can use those that information. And that kind of leads us to the next topic, which is, why do emotions matter? In the discussions, I just want to bring your attention back to the discussion boards on the learning portal. There were a lot of interesting comments in this section. So I really encourage you to participate, to write, to read, to respond, because there's a lot of rich information that's there. So the first topic, and this was one that a lot of people mentioned, was attention, memory, and learning. And most of you pointed out that this is a factor for yourselves, like what do you pay attention to? How are your emotions impacting you? But also sort of taking it to the student level. How are emotions impacting their attention, memory, and learning? The second area in our lives where emotions make a difference is decision making. And sometimes we think that, unpleasant emotions will lead us to make bad decisions, and pleasant ones will lead us to make good decisions, but it's a lot more complicated than that. So we can assume if we're feeling happy, for example, we might not look at something critically, or the positive side of that is we might be open to new ideas. And the same way with unpleasant emotions, like feeling irritable. On the one hand, we might reject something out of hand when making a decision, but it also helps us be more critical and consider the different aspects. The important thing around decisions is being aware of our emotions. Simply being aware will help us improve the outcomes of our decisions. The next area of impact is relationship quality. I know I'm throwing a lot at you right now, but I just know that you may have seen this before, and I want to make sure we touch base on all of them. Relationship quality, this is another one of those areas where the sort of approach or avoid message in emotions impacts our relationships. And these can be sort of approach or avoid in an immediate sense, but also in a larger sense of, is this someone you want to spend time with, or is this not, in terms of the emotions that they evoke. And it doesn't mean that there's a judgment about the person. It's just, what emotions do you feel when you're around that person? And then finally, mental and physical health. And when we think about this, we can think about direct impacts like, having a headache or an upset stomach, stiff muscles, sitting on this uncomfortable chair. I'm going to have very stiff muscles. But there are also a lot of indirect ways that emotions impact our health and well-being. And those are things like, do we get enough sleep? Do we eat a healthy diet? Do we exercise? You know, sort of the choices that we make about healthy behaviors are impacted by our emotions. So I want to give you all a chance to participate a little bit. Nikki, can you stop the slide for just a minute?
Sure. And I also just want to raise a question that was in the chat from Judy. Are emotions the same as feelings?
Nikki,
and I'm happy
I'll let
to
you
jump
take
in
that
here. Great. So that is a great question. And we've tackled it from a few different angles through the years. And just to say that usually the way that we explain it based on science is that feelings are really the private, subjective thing that's going on in our mind. It's more of an internal thing that's up here. And emotions scientifically are kind of the sudden response when you see the saber-toothed tiger that Charlene mentioned, or you see a snake, or you see a spider, or when you walk into a party that you didn't know was happening and everybody says, surprise. And so those immediate sudden reactions, those are the scientific definition of emotions. And the feelings are sort of the private mental states. But for the purposes of our conversations and in Ruler, we just use the word emotion. And you'll see that the mood meter is called the mood meter. And same thing, we sort of use the word moods, emotions, feelings all interchangeably, even though scientifically and research-wise, they're defined in very specific ways. So Judy, let us know if that got it, the question, if you have an additional one.
Got it. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah.
And I think that the key to what Nikki said is that the point is how you use this information and not getting hung up on the actual definitions. I think is the point to sort of consider. So one of the things that in talking with colleagues that has become sort of apparent is that if we think back in the pandemic, like a year ago, maybe a little more than a year ago, there was a lot of talk about the impact of emotions on student well-being, their mental and physical health. And more recently, the comments about the impact of emotions is on attention, memory, and learning. And I'm just curious if you have thoughts about what's behind, what's going on with that shift in focus. You know, why is attention, memory, and learning more of a concern now, or more of a in people's awareness more in terms of emotional impact?
I think
Yeah,
maybe
Rebecca?
we're back in school all the time. And so, but you know, it's like, it was very inconsistent last year. And now teachers and parents are seeing like what it's like all day, every day. And it's definitely, there is a lot of attention, memory, like all of that is definitely like right in front of you.
Mm-hmm. So when you were seeing kids maybe an hour a day, that
I mean,
might
it might have still been a thing, right? But we weren't seeing it the same way.
Right.
It's just like smacking us in the face for 6 hours. Yeah.
Right. Other thoughts about why adults are thinking more about emotions and attention, memory, and learning now?
I believe like over the pandemic, it gave us some time to be still. So we were able to be more observant over like the attention, the emotions that we were feeling. And before, everything was so go, 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 that you really didn't have time to think about that. But as you are still and there's not really much to do in your house, you have to go internally and focus on those things that you may not have focused on before the pandemic and the shutdown.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And oh, Nikki, you just put in So Nikki probably said it more succinctly. Why now more than ever are we as society and adults in students' lives more interested in the connection between emotions and their impact on attention, memory, and learning?
I'm a visual learner, so I figured someone else might want it in front of them.
I think when I think about this question, I think that early in the pandemic, you know, a year when everybody was just adapting to remote learning, everything was different. Everything was different for us. Everything was different for students. And those differences were really stark. And now, even for classrooms that are functioning online, we're sort of saying, okay, you know, this is reality now. Let's refocus on the reason we're all together, which of course includes student well-being, but you know, they also need to learn the academic stuff. So I think that is behind some of the shift in the way we are thinking about how emotions impact young people. Okay, I'm going to very quickly go over the skills of emotional intelligence. Let's see. I'm going to go over them very quickly. Nikki, can you share your screen again? So just while Nikki's doing that, when we think about what emotional intelligence is, so Ruler has 5 skills of emotion, it identifies 5 skills of emotional intelligence. And when we think about what is that, what is emotional intelligence? There's a formal definition that was developed some time ago. And that definition is emotional intelligence is the ability to monitor one's own and others' feelings, to discriminate among them, and to use this information to guide one's thinking and action. That's a complicated sort of definition, but putting it more simply, emotional intelligence is about what we do with our emotions. So it's about using our thinking to impact our emotions, inform our emotions, and our emotions to inform our thinking and behavior. So the skills of emotional intelligence, Ruler is an acronym, in addition to being the name of how we approach, or of the approach. It's also an acronym for the 5 skills of emotional intelligence. So the first is recognizing emotions. And this really means paying attention to and identifying emotions in yourself and others by noticing changes in our thoughts, in our bodies, what's happening physiologically, and in expressions, like what's happening with our tone of voice and our and our facial expressions. It's similar when you are when you're recognizing emotions in others. You're going to attend to what's happening with their tone of voice, their body language, their expressions, and so on. There is an activity on the learning portal that asks participants to record an emotion, physical, do an actual video recording, expressing an emotion without using words. Who found it difficult in some situations to tell what emotion somebody was expressing, to get it on the first try every time? I see a no. So that can happen for a number of reasons, but there are differences. A couple of important ones is that there's a difference in everybody expresses emotions, the same emotions, in their own unique way. So there are differences in how people express emotions, and also our interpretation. And also, we don't have a lot of information. So what we know, how we recognize emotions, is based on what else is happening. The U in Ruler is understanding emotions. And this is about knowing what causes emotions, and also what happens as a result of feeling an emotion? What changes in our thinking, in our behavior, in our outlook? So what causes it, and then sort of the consequences. What does it do? Why does it matter? Labeling involves using a very nuanced vocabulary to express a full range of emotions. And if I say, Nikki, how are you feeling? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Fine.
Fine. So what does that tell me? She could be feeling like she just got over COVID and she's not feeling horrible. Or it could mean that she's contented, or it could mean fine, like not really fine. So Nikki, do you have if I asked you, what are you feeling? And asked you to be more specific, what word might you choose?
If I'm being honest in this moment, if anger is a perceived feeling of perceived injustice, my son, who is in 6th grade, and my husband, who's a high school teacher, both got a snow day today, and I did not. So I'm a little bit angry about that. And it's a little bit of an overstatement. There's just, I'm a little envious, I guess, because they're outside in the snow and I'm in here.
And so Nikki might, depending on what word she uses to label her emotions, her response, what she does in that situation is likely to be different. If she used the word envy to talk about her son and husband being out playing in the snow, she might do something different than if she, she might go play with them or something. But if she's angry, maybe she doesn't cook dinner and says, make a sandwich. So the words that we use matter because they affect what we do with the emotion. And so all of those things sort of hang together because that's what's going on inside our heads. It's sort of in us. The last two ruler skills, expressing and regulating, are sort of more out there, how we show our emotions and what we do to regulate them. So expressing is more than just sort of letting your emotion, sharing your emotions. That's not a skill. We can all sort of, get them out there. But the skill is really understanding how and when to express emotions depending on the situation. So how you express your emotions at home is probably different from how you would at school, and how you express emotions with your friend is probably different from how you would express them with your 3-year-old. So it really, and the other things that play into our expression of emotions is, what rules did we learn about when we were growing up, and in our culture and in our families, what were those rules? And we'll get into regulating emotions, but I want to have, all right. I'm at a very difficult decision point because we have about 10 minutes left, and I really would love to do a breakout session. So, but I also want to get to some other information. So I'll give you what I had hoped to use in the breakout session as something to consider, and maybe something to talk about in your teams. And that is, what was your emotion education growing up? What did you learn about emotions? What did you learn about the rules? What was okay to express, what wasn't? And so what was the experience like that sort of got you to where you are? Yes. Luis?
Yes, for me, it was more like a cultural, environmental thing where we didn't really share our emotions and how we felt and what we thought. It was kind of like if you show your emotions, you show weakness. Mm-hmm. And when I was growing up, we couldn't show our emotions, the the females were taught to share their emotions and share their feelings, but the males were taught to hide it and to have this bravado of being, strong. So that was like my emotional upbringing when we were growing up.
And were the rules the same for all emotions?
Pretty much.
So
you can see
anger,
like the
sadness.
physical emotions that come out of you, the anger, the rage, the laughter and stuff like that. But like the inner thoughts of how you felt, you were not allowed to share those things. Kind of like you're not heard, you're seen, but not supposed to speak. And that's pretty much how we were taught when we were growing up.
Anybody else share that experience? I saw a head nodding. So I think, again, when you go back to your teams, I think it's important to really, or even for yourself to think about, how did I learn? What did I learn? Who taught me? Or for most of us, we didn't. We learned something, but we didn't necessarily learn things that are the most helpful to us in all situations. So Nikki, can you move on?
And I also just want to raise, this was put into the chat a while ago, but I think Laura had a really nice comment here in the chat about the pandemic making it impossible for us not to focus on emotions and mental health due to the extended time at home, family, away from peers, and that it's a collective trauma we can't ignore. And that's why we're seeing the impact on attention, memory, learning, et cetera.
Yeah.
So I thought that was important to raise.
Yeah.
And
Thank you. Thank you for that. So week 2, which is the week that you finished up right before the break, was all about the charter. And I know a lot of people, as the break was approaching, didn't have a chance to create a charter for your team. There is an activity guide in the process that's outlined on the learning portal that will guide you through the process of creating a charter. But just briefly, a charter is kind of a promise. It's an agreement about how we want to feel when we're together and what we're going to do to ensure that everyone in our community has those feelings most of the time. The charter process is the real purpose and goal is to create a sense of community, positive climate, sorry, this happens to me, please bear with me, when I run short. I always have more that I want to cover than I have time to do. So, the purpose of the charter is really to create that sense of community, to create a positive climate, and to create a set of an agreement, a set of norms that will guide behavior. For you in this training, creating the charter for your team will help you achieve the goals that you've set forth. The charter has 2 questions. The first is, how do we want to feel when we're together? And the second is, what will we do to ensure that those feelings are experienced most or all of the time? What can we do? What needs to change to make sure that people feel those feelings, experience those feelings?
I can jump in here, Charlene.
Yeah, please.
Sure. So 2 questions: how do we want to feel, and how will we help ourselves and each other feel this way? And just a key thing about this, the beauty of the charter is in the process, learning about how those around us want to feel, and actually considering ourselves, how do I want to feel when I'm at school, when I'm in my office, if I'm a leader, when I'm working with my students, if I'm a teacher in the classroom. So making the space to ask ourselves that question, because we don't always, how do I want to feel? So setting an intention, and then getting to know how others want to feel. And then just really considering what we can do to get ourselves there, and considering what we can do to help others to get to where they want to be emotionally. And the charter is, as Charlene said, an agreement. And it can be a document that's physically in a space, in a classroom or in an office. It could also be something that's online. And we like to talk a little bit about maintenance because it really should be a living document, something that is revisited and revised and referred back to over time, because we spend a lot of time thinking about how we want to feel and how we'll help each other to get there. So we want to refer back to it. And we also want to make sure that as new students enter the building, as new staff join, the faculty, that they have an opportunity to weigh in on how they want to feel and what will help them to get there. And so we have a lot of resources in the training portal, and then also in our implementation platform that you'll receive access to in week 6 on building the charter and on maintaining the charter and revisiting it over time.
Okay, thanks, Nikki. Can you go to the next slide? I talk about when we talk about the behaviors, the answer to the second question is about making the behaviors smart. And you all are probably familiar with the SMART acronym, but it's really about making things concrete and observable. So if I were walking into your school and I had a checklist, and on my checklist were the behaviors that are on your charter, would I be able to mark that to say, yes, I saw that? Would I see evidence that you were engaged in the behavior that you had selected? So we'll take a couple of minutes together. Nikki, if you can put up the next part of the, so instead of in breakout rooms, yeah, go to the next. There are these, one more, 4 ideas, 4 behaviors that we have seen on charters, but it's helpful to go one step further and say, what does that mean? So if you take the first behavior, so people say we want to feel valued. And how are we going to do that? We're all going to collaborate or work as a team. So what does that look like? What concrete behaviors? What could I check off to say, oh yeah, they're collaborating? Just sort of popcorn style, if you can share your thoughts on what behavior, pick any of them, collaborate, be engaged, be open to new ideas, or support each other. What specific behaviors would I see?
You select support each other. That can look like maybe responding to somebody's response within the portal weekly, maybe responding to team members' responses within the portal every week.
Mm-hmm. It could be another idea for support each other might be offer to type something up, or offer to be the note taker in a group setting. Sarah, another comment. Okay, we are actually 1 minute from time, so we'll maybe circle back to looking at when you've had a chance to create charters, circle back to looking at whether the behaviors that are on the charters are something that you could notice, you could observe. There would be, you could use them as evidence that you are engaged in the behaviors that are part of your charter. So I want to respect your time. Our next session, live session, is next Friday, the 14th at 11. So there'll be a notice next week. Next week is week 3. That unit has already opened up. It opened up before the break, but we'll be looking at that information this week, though. So thank you all for coming, joining us. Take care.
Bye.